Friends, our next session is a special treat. It's an edition of Infineon's TechFor talks at DLD. TechFor, just like DLD, brings together thought leaders from diverse sectors to explore the complexities of the green and digital transformation from technological, social, and economic perspectives. Therefore, I'm very proud to host here today a distinguished panel on the question whether the outlook for sustainable mobility is future positive or not. Not Andreas. Welcome with me our host, Andreas Urschütz, member of the Management Board and Chief Marketing Officer of Infineon Technologies. I hope everyone knows what Infineon is. Hallo Andreas, schön dich zu sehen. Willst du das Panel ansagen? Would you like to announce the panel?
I take over from here onwards.
Okay,
Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure to welcome you here, the audience in the room, but also the audience in the video stream at home. Building on Steffi's nice introduction, TechFor, a sustainable future, is a platform curated by Infineon. It brings together an ecosystem of players to facilitate public discussion about sustainable technologies and their role for decarbonization of planet Earth, and what it takes to get us there from a perspective of technology, economy and finance, politics and public policy, people and society, and last but not least, science and education. It is our great pleasure to be here, embedded in the DLD, with our 6th TechFor event to discuss future positive or not tech for sustainable mobility. With this, I'm delighted to ask our 3 distinguished experts to join me on stage. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Herbert Diess, well-known distinguished expert for mobility, electrification, and economy. Herbert. Professor Maya Göpel. She is a political economist and highly acknowledged expert for sustainable transformation of society. She will be mostly representing the view of policy-making aspects and civil society. Hello, Maya. Last but not least, I welcome Professor Markus Lienkamp, an internationally leading researcher in the area of mobility. He's professor for automotive technology at the Technical University in Munich. Today, our representative for science and education. Hello, Markus. Please take a seat. Before talking about the future of sustainable mobility, I believe it is important to calibrate us on the presence and understand the here and now. Just reading recently newspapers, on January 10th, Copernicus reported that 2024 was the hottest since 100,000 years, already exceeding the 1.5 degrees C target. To decelerate global warming, we all know we have to decelerate carbonization, or in other words, decarbonize our planet, where more than 20% of today's CO2 emissions stem from the automotive, mobility, and transportation sector. Let me get started with Herbert Diess. Herbert, you're taking a very passionate position for the electrification of mobility, from combustion engines towards battery electric. So, is that the solution?
I think it's definitely the only viable solution which we know. I think it's well understood worldwide what has to be done. It's working, it's proven. There are systems which are already converted 100%, like Norway. China is now at 50%. So it's working, it's much more efficient. Mobility becomes cheaper, not more expensive, and mobility becomes emission-free and helps to save the planet. Will we eradicate emissions from mobility? No, it's a reduction of about 50%, but it's by far the most cost-efficient way, and we are well on the way.
German Minister of Transport, Volker Wissing, recently was saying we should keep technology open to faster reach climate goals. He was referring to e-fuels and hydrogen. Is this annoying you?
No, it's not annoying. It's it's a very German discussion. We have to recognize. I think we lost a lot of time because the customers were really distracted by this discussion. Shouldn't we wait for synthetic fuels, or is hydrogen our fuel cells an alternative? No, and I think that's the best way to distract the customer, to bring uncertainty in the game, and to make sure that the customer doesn't buy electric cars. It's what we are suffering in Germany now. I think we recovered now. I think the way forward is more clear. Even the next government which will take place already is considering incentives for electric cars, which they, a few months ago, they wouldn't have told us. So I think we are on the right way, but we lost time because of discussion. The worldwide, and it's not a discussion which can be taken in Germany, it's taken already in China, 50% is electric cars, and I have heard in the last panel discussion, sorry being a little bit long here, this tipping point. No? Tipping point in energy production was 2018 when solar energy became cheaper than any other energy, cheaper than coal, fossil. And this tipping point was actually last year when electric cars in China became cheaper than combustion engine cars. From there on, you can't stop it anymore.
So to sum it up, e-fuels, would you consider them to be a fata morgana?
I said it a few times because, you know, e-fuels are very far down the line. They are hugely energy intensive. And this idea that we would run old cars, or let's say cars which we do not convert into EVs, on e-fuels just doesn't work, because e-fuels will remain relatively expensive. So would anyone run his old car, 15 years old, on e-fuels? No. Probably if it's a Porsche, if it's a vintage car, old-timer, yes. But e-fuels never will be able to compete with electric-driven cars.
So that's worth an applause. Thank you.
But it's probably a hope for somebody, so I don't want to take all the hope away.
Thank you for taking a stand on behalf of the auditory, which obviously likes the statement. Markus Lienkamp, in your book, Status Electromobility 2023, you raised the question why the EV is not the solution. What is the solution?
In this book, I tried first to explain that we have to talk about the boundary you draw. And a lot of people just think that the electric car as it is today is a solution. And I was, the picture on the first side was a big SUV. And at the moment, we see a lot of big cars which definitely need a lot of energy. And when you have a big SUV, electric SUV, and you draw the boundary over the whole system, it might be worse than a small other car. Doesn't matter what drivetrain you use. And at the end of the book, I was stating that we need smaller cars. We are running exactly into the opposite direction. We need to draw the boundary, including the production of the car. We cannot just produce the car and don't count it. At the moment, we are doing that. It's not really counted. We are just looking at the tailpipe emissions. They are zero, but we are not counting the production. And I think if we really want to become sustainable, we have to talk about the mobility system. And we have to achieve that especially electric cars are getting a lot of mileage. The better, the more the kilometers they run. So it would be good to have electric cars, for example, in car sharing. Because when you have an electric car, which is just standing in your garage, until about 5,000 kilometers per year, it's better to run it by e-fuels, which is bad, I know. But if you just take...
I don't agree, by the way.
If you just take the whole balance of the car, the whole CO2 emissions of an electric car are bigger if you just don't use the car.
Yeah.
So Herbert, you don't agree?
Let me, at least I have to say something about this. I think it's right. No, the rucksack or the initial CO2 emissions for producing the battery are huge, 16, 17 tons. This is why plug-in hybrids are alternatives, because they have much smaller batteries. They drive 90% electric, and it's much better. I would say they are not reasonably discussed currently. But I would say this opportunity that we have this huge battery solves another problem, which we just heard here on the panel, which is to produce the energy when the sun is shining, when it's for free, and put the energy back into the grid after sundown in the late. This is exactly what we are working on. And it's really, I would say, a fantastic formula, because we have also electric cars which have huge storages. You know, the batteries are huge. It's for 400, 500 kilometers, but the people only drive 20 to 30 kilometers per day. So we have this huge battery, underused. And on the other hand, we have so much cheap energy whenever the sun is shining, and the car is only driven for 1 hour per day, no, on average, 1 hour per day. So 90-something% it's idling. So why not using this battery, which is in the garage, as a storage to shift sun energy, which is basically for free, and put it back into the networks in the afternoon? That's exactly what we're working on. The first product now already is in the market. It's a Renault 5 in France, which is exactly doing that. And the benefit for the customer is that he doesn't have to pay any more for the energy he consumes in the car. We can produce more renewable energies and work on that, and we need less grid extensions and so on. So I think it's positive that we have these huge batteries.
I agree. So summing it up, you're saying that sustainable mobility, of course, covers much more than only the electrification of the car. It includes sharing systems. It includes then also new business models that help truly leveraging the car battery as a storage system and so on and so forth. But let me come back to the reality regarding the electric vehicle, which is, and also that was just recently announced by the media, that in Germany in 2024, only 380,000 EVs were newly registered. What does that mean? This overall results in a total of 5% share of electric vehicles in the overall German fleet, which is far below the targets that have been set by the federal government. Maya, I would be interested, why is this going so slow?
I always get these funky questions. No, I would love to, because I think what we've had what we've had right now is an interesting difference in point of view. And I would like to push forward on that. What do we mean with the mobility point of view? You kind of introduced it a little bit more, but it is, for me, the epicenter of the question, are we going to make it to a sustainable future or no? If we're only going to follow the path of having an automobile-focused mobility system, we won't. And I think this is so crucial because it's another kind of purpose or another end vision that we're developing towards. And this
I think it is part of the problem that the overall, so to say, target picture for a mobility system is missing, and that has an impact on the slow penetration of electric vehicles on German roads. Would you think so?
I'll come to that point. It is, when you think about it, I mean, mobility, when you start to innovate, ideally you go back 3 steps and think about what is the final purpose, what's the need case that we want to deliver on. And I would say 3 things. We want to go from A to B on the need of getting somewhere in a secure, reliable, and customizable way. And now we have the pathway, infrastructure, and an automobile focus. But if you said now, step back and say we want to actually update the system to any alien designer, and say, put us in place something that respects planetary boundaries and allows for people to get from A to B in a secure, reliable, customizable way, do you think they would come up with the idea it's fantastic to have tons of giantly heavy boxes of metal that bind a lot of the materials that we would need for solar panels, for windmills, stand around, block the space, the public space everywhere, or in the front of your houses, only to be there for 95% of the time, not moving, and force you to sink a lot of your money, we're talking thousands and $10,000s of dollars, into a thing that hasn't moved you an inch by the time you've paid? Yep. Do you think that would be a mobility system?
Maya.
But this is where we have to start from, and then you understand, because we're so deeply ingrained in the other pathway, because there's so much, I mean, in Germany we're talking about a big percentage of our GDP coming from especially this place where we have become a leader of automobile-based mobility. And there you have a lot of the answers of why it's so difficult for us in comparison to others to get out of this. But I think unless we're really saying what do we want to innovate towards, we'll find it very hard, A, to reach future positive, and B, to have a consistent policy alignment and then an idea where investments can go and designers can go to make it happen, including maybe something like a positive push. I mean, I don't get very excited by saying, oh great, yeah, SUVs with another little angle of this or that on their windshield wipers. Or, yeah, really, is that all we can do?
So you told me, thank you. You told me recently, talking about positive communication, you told me recently that there is such a big amount of negative events communicated publicly. How can we get public discussion centered much more around the positive side of stories to get us out of this inertia and status quo? And it's an open question to the entire round, but Maya, maybe you get started.
Yeah, please, Maya. I think there are many positive things around. Now, as I said, we are all concerned about climate change, and now Trump basically is steering against and questioning all the policies we have put in place. So it is a relatively, for Europe, it's a very negative scenario and very threatening things happening, but there are also very positive things. Now, I think it's a solar penetration now is growing, and we heard that also in the last panel, 60% last year. It's doubling every 3 years. It's, let's say, the addition of new energy systems is 80% now solar, 90% solar and wind. So now nobody is anymore investing in coal, in fossil fuels. It's gone. It's just because they became so cheap. They don't need any policy anymore. Same is going to happen with electric cars. They are going to be rolled out through the world. Might be Germany is lagging a little bit behind, but that doesn't matter in the world, on a worldwide scale. So I think very on the environmental side, very positive things. All those things which have been scaled in China, meanwhile, solar panels, batteries, high voltage DC lines, electric cars, are becoming so competitive and so much cheaper than the old world, than the fossil world, that they will make their way through.
But let me come back to the question of speed. Obviously there's a lot of economic rationale that you just highlighted that should have brought us already much more fast ahead relative to the reality. So my question is, what is the underlying factor here, in particular in the middle of Europe, with regards to this perceivingly slow speed? Is this people having fear from losing too much and, so to say, sticking to protect the status quo? Or is it just this everlasting striving for utmost transparency and perfection, thinking everything through to the end? Or what makes us that slow? Do we have a mindset problem here in this country?
Well, I think we had a bit of a superiority complex problem here in this country, because we had Deutschland AG, which was a big connection between the political system and political parties, partly being big shareholders in VW, for example, with the state of Lower Saxony as well. We see it in other big companies as well, like Thyssen, Stahl, etc. When you have a big convolute, basically, that's not really a market system where you have policy making on the one side and then business on the other side, but have it too tightly welded together, you feel quite secure. And the companies were kind of feeling, yeah, we're going to be protected. And since there are so many employees locked into that system as well, it's very difficult for policymakers also to say, we're going to have a bit more disruption going through that sector, because then it's going to hit you and your electorate circle. And I remember when he was then Altmaier, he was our deputy chancellor at the time, and Chancellor Minister, and he was responsible for a sustainability strategy. And he said two things which were really interesting to me, which kind of make you understand why policy making is not going to be the driver right now, but needs to be pushed. We were talking about not reaching German sustainable development goals, which has targets on building new renewables in, etc. And then he said, well, if we don't meet the targets, it's a proof that they've been set too high. I was like, wow, that thing you can probably only say when you're a policymaker. I mean, you can't do that in any other business, right? And the other thing, when he said, there was a talk about the mobility strategy that Germany is investing in and putting forward, the Verkehrswegeplan in German. And the thing is, he's pulled it open and then said, oh yeah, no, I saw there's no streets planned in my electorate constituency, so no, it must be a bad strategy. And this is brazen. Right? And so when you feel brazen, you have a superiority complex. And this is where I remember discussions in 2016, also with VW, after they had the diesel scandal, when we were sitting there in a sustainability panel. It's like, when is this going to move you? I mean, you've got a criminal DNA right now because you've cheated on the diesel. You have China running there, and you've got Tesla coming. So what is going to make you move? And he kind of smiled at me and said, you know, as long as we're paying, our engineers know that we're selling so many of those cars to China still, I can't really tell them to let go of their babies. So it is a thing of feeling too safe when you're too tightly ingrained, I think.
Moving over from talking about babies of engineering, what do you think, Markus?
As an engineer, I think there's a very easy view on electromobility. There are 3 points which are holding back electromobility. We call it rest in peace: range, infrastructure, price. When I consider the range, all the announcements today of the OEMs are going for next year or 2026 to ranges between 500, 600, 700 kilometers. So in my opinion, that problem is solved. Infrastructure, I think the charging infrastructure is not so bad in Germany. The main problem is that people have problems to access it. Some people have problems to reserve a charging station. Sometimes the payment is not so easy. But in principle, I think that's also getting solved, especially because the range is increasing so much and you don't have to charge anymore. Then is the last point, price. The price at the moment, the tech price, is higher still than from internal combustion engines. And there's a very easy solution, and that will happen, and that's happening already. The OEMs have to make the cars with internal combustion engines more expensive, and on the other side, to reduce the prices for battery electric vehicles. And they have to. And I'm not really concerned about the future, because the European Union has set very clear, I would call it, quotas for electric vehicles. 2025 is the next step, 2030 is another step, and 2035 is a discussion to go to fully electric. And what I'm hearing at the moment is that some companies are holding back their electric sales 2024 to have them counted for 2025. And it doesn't really matter what Germany is doing in the European Union, they have to fulfill it. And it wouldn't help to give subsidies in Germany. That's wasted money. They have to sell the cars anyway. Then it would be easier to give the money just directly to the OEMs.
So when
I found it super interesting because we had this pushback against the fleet targets, right? Yeah. So that's still technologically totally open. And still it was attacked as being over-bureaucratic and would restrain. But you only have the obligation to have your fleet meet the targets. Yeah. And then it was all about, we won't meet the targets, you have to lower the targets. Once again, right, if they're set too high, we don't want to pay. And now that they've stayed firm, all of a sudden, the automobile makers can swap amongst each other, right? They pay off the extras of each other.
One of a sudden, that was always the case.
Yeah,
but
there's one point when...
No, but this is important, to not always back down in the moment, and then the creativity of how can we still make it happen can come.
If the European Union stays with those limits, the OEMs will reach it. But if then Robert Habeck is questioning the current limits, then it's getting difficult. I think the politicians have to be clear to say, that's it. Live with it, do it. And it will work. I'm 100% convinced.
So summing it up, coming back to the question of what does it take in order to get faster, it's a couple of elements. It's the politics, it's the civil society, it is the pricing point of the EVs, where I'm hearing from you that we are already there in terms of pricing, or at least cost equivalence in between an electric car and the combustion engine. Is that the case? So is battery technology in particular already at this point to allow similar pricing for EVs relative to combustion engines?
If you talk about total cost of ownership, I think we are already there.
But people are not interested that much as primary argument. They are saying, yeah, so the car must be cheaper, then I buy one.
If you take the tech price, we still have a gap. Yeah.
When do you think that battery cost will be there so that it allows pricing equivalent to ICEs?
Oh, that's difficult. If you talk about 60, 70 kilowatt hours in a car, and just the battery costs for the cells are in the range of maybe 70 euros, then it's 5,000 euros. That's what you have to pay. So I doubt that we are.
It's the cost of an engine. Yeah.
Sorry?
It's the cost of a V8 engine. Yeah, so.
Yeah, V8 engine, but not a Golf. So I think it will take some years to get there.
I don't agree. In China, we're already there. Yeah. If now we put import taxes on it, it will take some time. If we let the Chinese in, it's happening now. Yeah. Because the cars are actually, the battery price is falling in China months by months, basically.
That's true.
Yeah. So that's over. But one point I wanted to make, because we think there's a lot of rational reasons which we are discussing a lot, no? And there are, and you can think about it. But then there is this situation that, let's say, the same cars, the same range, the same even price level for the energy sells much better in Holland, Denmark, UK, the Nordics. Yeah, Nordics now, Norway is at 100%. You would assume that, range is much more important in Norway than in Germany. That it's freezing cold there. Yeah, they don't have really, they need heating all the time. So why? Yeah.
No, what is the reason?
I think there are some regional considerations, which also energy is relatively expensive. We have a very old-aged first-time customer for the cars, so it's much older customer base than we have, for instance, in China and in some of the other countries. But what's also important, we are living from fuel technology, from fossil technology. We have high benefits. We have an industry which is based on Mahle, is Kolben. Yeah? They don't have any alternative in the electric world. It's ZF gearboxes. It is Bosch injection system. So we have really something to lose here. And in Germany, in the discussion, we tend to see the risks. Yeah? And we don't see the potential. Infineon, we are in this new world. Now we are happy if the car becomes electric, because we can have twice the turnover on an electric car than on a combustion engine car. We have a plant in the north of Germany which has doubled in size because of inverters, which we do there in Warstein. No? From 1,000 people now close to 3,000 people. Nobody's talking about that. No? Everyone is talking about why are we going to lose. Next thing is Siemens Energy. No? Their share price went up more than NVIDIA's in the last year because they do electric infrastructure. No? So we talk a lot about the things we are going to lose and not the things we are going to we can win, and that's it's difficult for the German mindset there.
So Markus. What do you think?
I would just like to add one aspect to the difference between Germany and all the other countries. We don't have a speed limit.
Yeah, it's also a reason. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
And we have, I think, just to protect a little bit the policymakers I was giving fire to, we do have an identity thing as well, right? As soon as you see any poor politicians, Munich had this attempt as well to say, how about we lower the amount of cars in our inner cities? How about we give some parking lots to some trees? you are really in dire straits. So there is an issue, A, with our attachment to automobiles, because it's so much ingrained in our national identity and our pride. So I think that has to be, A, taken serious, but how do we then manage to get to the next level? I think that's the interesting one. And how do we invite politicians not to abuse that? I mean, Markus Söder is one of the best examples. I remember, he's the Bavarian prime minister here, or minister president, and his most epic thing was, I'm Schnitzel, I'm out. And I was like, oh, you always kind of came across like a human to me, but interesting that you want to put yourself or attach yourself to one particular thing. And this thinginess is something that I think we need to let go of. This is why I came from mobility. It's a kind of service-oriented idea. And we are very thingy in the things that we are proud of. We possess them, we put them somewhere. But actually the functionality should be the thing that fascinates us. And I think this is where it really goes together also with what we're here for, with the kind of technological breakthroughs. Because there's a lot of functionality that we don't see. And we could have that as a kind of challenge to us to say, how do we make things work in the best possible way with the least baggage that stands around, sits around, and we have to sink costs in before we get that functionality out. And this is just a totally different innovation paradigm. And that could maybe give us a new pride, I don't know, but I think it would be very much, really, really a good idea to try it.
Yeah. Let us now also talk about the future and potentials for acceleration of transformation towards sustainable mobility. So Herbert, you mentioned before that in China, obviously, in terms of battery cost and productivity, that allows already cars to be offered at price levels underneath combustion engines. That reminds me of an anecdote. So when I was last autumn in Shanghai, I was standing at the street and waiting for the traffic light, and all of a sudden there parked a very small sized BYD car next to me. And BYD is a battery-driven car. And then my colleague said, look, Andreas, 5 iPhones are standing next to you. 5 iPhones. I thought, what does he mean? He meant less than $10,000 as a price point for this very car. So obviously, since BYD is making profit, there is a way in terms of battery technology having reached a tipping point already. But let me get back to the question, Herbert. You met the founder of BYD, Wang Changfu. So what kind of person is this, and what does differentiate him from all our industry captains here in Europe?
Yeah, you know, I don't know him very well personally. We've met several times because we explored ways to work together in charging, in batteries, and so on and so forth. He's convinced that the electric car is the solution, but he's, like Elon, also convinced that he can make a fortune out of this. This is his lifetime opportunity, and he's making a big effort with all the support he can get to become a significant car manufacturer. What's probably a different mindset also for Elon and for him, they've right from the start saw the car not only as a means of transport. They always considered the car as part of an ecosystem. Now, he also started with solar panel production, with batteries for home storage, with using the car batteries for different applications. So they have a, let's say, kind of a wider mindset. And then he was really lucky because he was really politically supported. He got capital, a lot of capital from America. Then he pushed through. He made a lot of mistakes at the beginning. He did cars which nobody would buy. He went first at also big trucks for different tasks, but now he's really good in the way. He still has to prove that this company can work outside of China. No, it's not yet proven. I think there's no access to America. Also, he struggled in Europe even before the taxes. I think it's a company to take really serious. I think both Tesla and BYD. The rest of the bunch, I think, is something the German car industry can still compete, but those two are really, really, and when it comes to cost comparison and also technology, they are really advanced. But he's kind of a character, he's committed, and there's a big difference. We are all our managers, yeah? And I think here in the room there are many founders, yeah? And there's a big difference between a manager and a founder, yeah?
So other than this and closing up on the China-Europe theme on electromobility, so Herbert, can Europe, and also Markus, can Europe still catch up or is it too late?
That takes too long. If you just take about batteries, you have to see that I think 80% of the battery is just trading materials. You are buying material, processing it, and at the moment the Chinese can buy pretty cheaply the ores and like copper and zinc, aluminum and so on. Sorry, not zinc, cobalt. And in Europe we have a problem to access those materials for a cheap price. And it's the same with Russia now. They are selling for cheap prices to China, and we are buying back the cars now to Europe. I think in terms of technology, if you take the whole car technology, we can certainly compete. For battery prices, it's really getting hard.
And is there any game-changing technology out there which might allow us to come back much faster?
We talk about different technologies since 10 years. I see at the moment more an evolution than a revolution.
So, and what is the thing, what you would say in 5 years from now? What battery technology will likely prevail in terms of cost performance?
In terms of costs, it's definitely lithium iron phosphate. That's preferred in China and in Europe for low-price cars with lower range. In Europe, the high-tech premium companies are all going to NMC because of the higher range and lower weight.
Mm-hmm. How about trucks and big transportation traffic? What about this? Also in view of the safety risk when such batteries may start burning?
We have done a very detailed analysis, and the main point is the lifetime of batteries for trucks, and there you have to go to LFP.
Also because of cost now.
And cost, yeah.
Cost and cycle.
It's cycling stability.
Lifetime.
Yeah, it's lifetime.
Yeah. I would add one point there now. And this was also on the last panel, that we are very concerned that those supply chains are all in Chinese hands now, but they are fully open. Now, the biggest customer of CATL, which is the biggest battery manufacturer, is no Chinese company. It's Tesla. Second biggest is, I think, BMW. So the Germans have full access to that technology and also to the cost base they have. Yeah.
So I want to come back to you, Maya, also in that regards. In your book, We Can Do Better, you refer to the importance of system thinking. What has to come together to accelerate the transformation, including all these factors we discussed before, to get us towards sustainable mobility and, I'm quoting you, getting us away from using up 1.7 planets while we only have one?
No, I think we've been in some places where the system thinking starts. What I found in the research is that quite often when we looked at where did innovation take place, how did we get different interests aligned again, is often a new mission, a new kind of framing of where do we want to go. Something especially important when you have very vested interests that have been combating for a long time. So you need to have something that allows to keep faith and to say we can step into this without one party having won. And one example that we recently had in Germany, for example, the renewable energies were very much attached with the Green Party and ecology, etc. But when Russia attacked, it was very clear it would be a liberation of freedom energy that came from the Liberal Party that likes to have more these kinds of namings and has their own identity more attached to that. And then it allowed for a new complete push and identification with this transformation that was really accelerating it a lot. And this is where, to come back to the mobility example, I found most of the interesting ones, or one of the very impressive ones, when you look at auto-free city centers. It just doesn't work, because when you say auto-free, auto is a thing that you have in your head, and everybody that still depends on it says, no, they want to take it away from me. So you're opening something that only goes into thinking about what will I lose. Whereas Anne Hidalgo, she's been the mayor now for a long time in Paris, she said, what are other needs in this place that I can try to address? And there, mobility was very much attached to being stuck in traffic. So it wasn't even moving, you were just sitting there, or in the metro. And then she said, how about we call it the 15-minute city? So there she was putting forward something that would result probably in similar policies and similar results, but the imagination was something totally different. I can do all my errands every single day without needing to sit in traffic, because we are going to restructure how the city is arranged. And this would be a mobility concept as well. But you start with a new vision, with a new mission that allows to enter and get people from different interests to align in your new. And you always need something that will manifest this. You need a conveyor for that, a new institution or a new organization, someone that pushes exactly for that, and always recalibrate how you can invite through a shift of framework, a shift of perspective, why this is something interesting for you as well. You do need to have to change rules in order for those things to be protected, so that they become the new normal. And then you come to a tipping point eventually where it just becomes nice, and I think Paris is there right now, where people say, wow, why didn't we do that before?
Yeah.
But it does start with a new idea of where do we want to go.
So finally, a very positive story. Thank you so much for this, Maya. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have to come to an end, and let me finish the panel with one single yes-no question. Let's come back to the beginning. Future positive or not? Markus Lienkamp, from a science and education point of view, will electromobility be the game changer for mobility becoming climate neutral, also in Germany?
Yes. It just takes a bit time, definitely.
Herbert?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. It's already happening.
From a technology and economy perspective, will the German and the European auto industry be back in a leading position in electromobility going forward?
I think they still have a good chance. No, they have, at the end, they have to win the competition in China. They're all very strong in China. If they can defend their position against the local manufacturers, they really have a good chance, because they need this ecosystem. No, they need access to the batteries, to the scales of inverters and everything. I think the next generation of cars which is coming will be brilliant. No, you mentioned it, huge range. Also technologically, we know from our customers that they're advancing also in the upgradability, software-defined vehicle. I think they have a good chance, yeah? Because, Maya, sorry to say, but the car is much more than a means of transport. No, it has to deliver on prestige, on show. It has
You're
to
attaching yourself to a thing there. Do you notice?
But before,
it has to suit your personality, yourself. You have to say something about you. So this is why the German car industry, which is, and the Chinese still could not show that they can do premium seriously. Also Tesla not. Yeah.
Herbert, I'm sure you and Maya have something to discuss backstage later. Let me come to you, Maya, last but not least. Maya, from civil society and transformation perspective, will our future be positive?
It totally depends. That's a scientist. And this is why absolutely we will have to say every single day what we can gain by going a step into that direction. There is no way of saying we lost, because that would be just defeatist. So obviously you'll find something every single day to highlight, and that will inspire others, and then we'll see.
Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, we are at the end of today's Tech for Sustainable Future panel discussion. I would like to say a heartfelt thank you. Thanks to the people here in the audience for active listening. Thanks to the people also at home in the live stream. And last but not least, thanks to the panelists for being with me on stage. Thank you a lot, and goodbye.